And I'm not just talking about the value of our currency. I'm talking about our currency being used throughout the world.
You want it to remain. You want the dollar to remain the world's reserve currency.
Well, I think it's bigger than losing any war.
In 31 days, everything changes for the U.S. dollar. And Trump knows it, by the way. He knows we're not talking about some vague, far-off threat here. We're talking about a countdown clock that has already been ticking. Trump is already kind of gearing up for this. He's been hinting at it over the past few weeks. So in 31 days, the Fed takes action to further weaken the U.S. dollar, slashing interest rates. They know that trouble is on the horizon. That's the only reason they're doing it. And while most of the media is still asleep at the wheel, the truth is the dollar's grip on the world is slipping fast. Americans are suffering. And honestly, that was the backdrop of this week's meeting with President Trump and President Putin. A declining U.S. dollar, the rise of the BRICS nations. Zero Hedge, by the way, just published a damning, really eye-opening report about the U.S. dollar and BRICS nations using gold to get around the U.S. dollar. They're building an entirely new trade and financial system right before our eyes. Putin walked into this meeting in a much stronger position than he's ever had before. So today I want to break all of this down for you, all of these news items that have happened over the past few days and where we're headed in the next month. We're going to look at what's happening inside the United States right now with the Fed, what's happening globally with the rise of the BRICS nations, why central banks are buying so much gold like there's no tomorrow, and at the end I'm going to tell you how I'm personally preparing for this recession that is likely coming in the next few months, even though the mainstream media doesn't want you to be aware of it because they make so much money. The mainstream media makes so much money on trying to trick you into believing that everything is fine. Really, they do. So let's start with what just happened in Washington, D.C. That was a big story that I saw almost no coverage of. Some of the financial press covered it, but pretty much everyone else ignored it. President Trump appointed Stephen Miran to the Federal Reserve. Now the press tried to play this off as some kind of temporary appointment, no big deal. But let me be clear, Miran is not just a placeholder. This guy has been very open about his views. He believes the U.S. dollar is too strong and that America needs a weaker dollar to stay competitive and to deal with our insane debt load, which just hit $37 trillion last week. You need a weaker dollar. That's the only way. You got to devalue the currency. How else are you going to afford paying $1 trillion on interest payments alone on that $37 trillion in debt? The answer is you're not. That's what he believes. And Trump hinted at this about a week ago when he said he was okay with a weakening U.S. dollar because that means we make more money.
Well, I'm a person that likes a strong dollar, but a weak dollar makes you a hell of a lot more money.
So this is coming, guys. Think about what that means. The U.S. government is basically admitting the dollar is going to be taken down a peg, maybe several pegs. And the markets already see it coming. Everybody is betting on a rate cut in September. Rate cuts weaken the dollar. And when that happens, money starts pouring into hard assets like gold. But it's not just the Fed. Here in the United States, something remarkable is happening that the mainstream media barely mentions. States are starting to bring back real money. Yeah, 5 states in the United States have now passed laws making gold and silver legal tender. This isn't symbolic. It's a revolt against fiat money, against government currency, basically a middle finger to the U.S. dollar, against the idea that pieces of paper with nothing behind them should be trusted forever. So lawmakers are saying out loud what we all know, the dollar's days as the thing we all rely on are coming to an end. Listen to Colonel McGregor on our show just a few weeks ago talking about the undercurrent of everything that's happening right now as the BRICS nations rise.
Remember, Putin just a few weeks ago spoke to the leaders of all the major industries and firms in the private sector in Russia and said it's time to come to terms with reality that these sanctions are never going to go away. The West is not going to finally wake up and turn back towards us and recognize that we're not the enemy. So we have to build bridges elsewhere. Those bridges are being built. It's called BRICS. And of course, you have the other supporting organizations like the Shanghai Cooperation Council and other entities, but they're all part of the same, let's move away from the United States. Let's get out from under these people. Let's no longer be dependent upon them so that we can live in peace. In other words, in a very interesting way, the Chinese, the Russians, and the whole global South and everybody is practicing a form of containment towards us.
But it gets worse. Globally, central banks are buying gold at a record pace. We're talking 4 straight years of over 1,000 tons of gold. Russia is leading the way. They're not doing this for fun. They're doing it to insulate themselves from the U.S. financial system. So when Putin was meeting with Trump this weekend, he had more cards than he's ever had before. Now, I know, all the MAGA crowd, like the Trump can never do any wrong crowd, were like praising the fact that we had all these bombers flying over Putin's head and what a show of power. And look at that. He's so powerful compared to Putin. Great. I love my president. I love the United States of America. I want our president to be powerful. But I'm telling you, it's totally different. President Putin has more cards than he's ever had before. Totally different scenario than the last time he was on American soil 10 years ago. Sanctions haven't worked against Russia. Russia has won a war against all of NATO. NATO poured everything they had into Ukraine, and Russia destroyed them. He might be a foot smaller than Trump, but he was in the ultimate position. And Russia didn't buy that much gold because they're just curious about it. Hey, what's this like? Like sort of dating in college. No, you do it because you know the system is about to shift. That's why they're doing it. And you want to be holding real assets when this shift happens, when the music stops and you have to sit down on that chair. And here's the biggest part of the story, BRICS. This is the part that the mainstream media, for some reason, just won't even touch because it blows up their entire narrative. BRICS Plus, which is Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, plus new members like Saudi Arabia, Iran, the UAE, Indonesia, now represent more than 40% of global output when you measure it by purchasing power. And guys, that's the point that Zero Hedge was making in this incredible article. This changes everything because that's now bigger than the old G7. This isn't some alternative club. This is now the main event. And what are they doing? They're actually trading in their own currencies, setting up a new payment system like BRICS Pay, which, by the way, I can't believe more people aren't talking about it. BRICS Pay. It allows people and businesses in BRICS countries to basically transfer money and settle trade directly using their local currencies without having to rely on the US dollar as the middleman. And most importantly, by the way, they're backing it all with gold. So China is quietly building a system where you sell resources for yuan and you park that yuan in gold, and then you reinvest in yuan bonds. That's tough to say. You reinvest in yuan bonds, but that's exactly what's happening. It's like a closed loop that cuts out the dollar entirely. So while Trump was meeting with Putin in Alaska and talking peace, there's this undercurrent that both men are well aware of. BRICS is rising. The US dollar is falling. But now here's where things get really explosive because governments are openly discussing something called a gold revaluation. Now that means literally repricing gold higher overnight to strengthen their balance sheets and erase chunks of their debt. And it's not just other countries, it's the United States, Fed. For the first time this month, openly talking about using gold for this purpose, reevaluating gold. Right now, the US government gold reserves are only valued at $42 an ounce. What they're talking about here is dramatically increasing the value of gold without selling one gold bar, just repricing it. Would they move it to $5,000 per ounce? $10,000 per ounce? Some economists are even saying that they might even reevaluate gold to $20,000 an ounce. Can you imagine? By the way, take a look at this meme. I like this, of Trump staring at the big red button, the gold reevaluation button, basically break glass in case of emergency. Well, folks, we are at that moment right now. That's why this moment is so dangerous, so important. All the forces are converging. The Fed moving towards cuts, states rejecting fiat currency, saying, hey, you can use gold and silver in our state. You don't have to use paper currency anymore. BRICS is building a brand new financial order right before our eyes. Central banks are gobbling up gold. And now governments and the Fed are quietly talking about pulling the trigger on revaluation. That's why I keep saying that everything is changing for the US dollar. I've been warning you for a while on this show, and I don't want to be caught flat-footed like so many people were during the 2008 collapse. And one of the most interesting opportunities I found is with today's sponsor, a company that sits right at the center of this gold story, which I'll get to in a second. Now, with everything converging over the next 30 days, I want to talk about today's sponsor, which is tied directly to all of this. And if you're an investor, you need to pay attention to today's sponsor. That's AxeCap Ventures. Here is their ticker on your screen, okay? Take a look at this. Write this down. It's available on Charles Schwab, on Interactive Brokers, any of the big brokerage sites, of course. Now, here's why I'm paying attention to them, and I have been for months now. I can probably count on one finger the number of companies where management kept buying stock on the open market month after month after month at a pace that looked more like a takeover battle than an ordinary insider accumulation, insiders buying up as much of the stock as they can. Now, AxeCap Ventures is the one on one finger. And in 2025, it's as if they're rewriting the rules of insider conviction, in my opinion. Now, I want to set the stage right off the bat. I plan to personally accumulate shares of AxeCap Ventures myself in my portfolio, and I want to show exactly why I'm positioning myself that way. Since the start of this year, insiders have purchased over $1.2 million worth of stock, and they're still adding more as we speak. And we're not talking about a symbolic purchase here to like signal confidence to the market. We're seeing 5-figure tranches bought at prices even well above the current market share price. I mean, right now, as of this recording on this Sunday, the stock trades within a penny or two of its all-time low. Insiders have been buying at much higher prices, even 70% higher than the stock sits right now. So what's driving this? Why are they buying up so many shares? Well, the Converse Gold Deposit in Nevada, one of the largest undeveloped gold resources in the United States, with 5.57 million ounces of measured and indicated and 0.42 million ounces in the inferred category. That's why they're buying shares. At AxeCap's current enterprise value of 26 million USD, the resource is valued at just $5 an ounce, compared to peer averages of $40 an ounce. That's a discount of 85%. Now, the Converse Gold Deposit has never been evaluated above $1,750 per ounce of gold. This is a key point I want you to pay attention to because it's been on the shelf for a decade. The previous owner did no drilling. And now with majors who are facing record low gold reserves and record high market caps and cash balances, it stands as one of the very few multi-million ounce first world deposits available to replenish a lot of senior mining stockpiles right now. So in mining, location is destiny, and I believe wholeheartedly that's why AxeCap Ventures has a decisive advantage here. Its flagship Converse Gold Deposit sits in Nevada's Battle Mountain Trend, one of the premier gold belts on the planet. It's responsible for 75% of U.S. gold production. Nevada is one of the safest, most mining-friendly jurisdictions in the world. And with President Trump, of course, pushing to bring domestic mining back to the United States, stop buying minerals from overseas, this is a huge moment. So the Converse Gold Deposit is actually the largest gold deposit in Nevada, not already controlled by a senior producer company. And only 29 new deposits have been found since 2010. None of them over 10 million ounces since 2016. So lead times from discovery to production now average 20 years. So in that environment, projects like AxeCap Ventures' Converse Deposit potentially becomes a prime takeover target from one of these larger companies. It's one of the few multi-million ounce resources in a first world jurisdiction that can replenish senior mining reserves. M&A is already heating up, with transactions being done at $40 an ounce. That's 8 times AxeCap's current $5 an ounce valuation. 8 times. Moreover, want more data? Because I've been studying this for a while. AxeCap has initiated a fully funded preliminary economic assessment for the project, which is a critical step towards quantifying value and advancing development of the gold deposit itself. So just let me bottom line this for you, okay? First of all, this is Nevada. It's trading at near all-time lows, with insiders buying relentlessly with a resource that's valued well below its peers. And as I said, AxeCap's gold equivalent resource is valued at just $5 an ounce, 85% below peers averaging $40 an ounce. And insiders of the company have recently acquired $1.2 million in shares, which in my opinion is a huge vote of confidence. So guys, do your own due diligence on this company. Study all of their financials and their public information. I'll have links to their website in the description below, and we'll see you next time because things are about to get really interesting over the next 30 days. Thanks, everyone.